Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Municipal Government and Housing Committee for May 13th, 2021. Mr. Clerk, will you take the roll?
Chairman Lombardo,
Here.
Senator Coleman,
Here.
Senator Rogers,
Here.
Senator Anderson,
Here.
Senator Gallo, Senator Mack,
Present.
Senator Picard.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. This afternoon, we have multiple bills with 1, 2, 3, 4 bills being testified by the same people. So the people that will be testifying, if you can present your testimony for each bill when you are called. The first bill is Bill number 237 by Senator Picard. Increases the minimum tax for qualification low-income housing from 8% to 10% of the property previous year's gross scheduled rental income. Senator Picard.
Mr. Chairman, if you like, I can do both this bill and the next bill at the same time. They are
Certainly.
dealing with the same subject matter.
Certainly.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen of the committee, thank you very much for hearing me today. The bills that you see in front of you started as a request from my community a few years ago. I've put them in various forms over the past few years. What was a good idea to promote more affordable housing in the past has been hijacked a bit. Let me kind of give you a little bit of background. The idea previously was to basically have non-residential properties, i.e. mills, that type of thing, renovated into high-intensity residential properties by incentivizing the investors. The idea was, instead of paying full property tax, the owner of the building will be able to pay 8% of the income generated from the rent in lieu of full property tax. What has occurred lately in some situation is current high-intensity housing units, which either pay current full property tax or have some other type of taxation agreement, have been doing some renovations to meet the guidelines of the 8% taxation program, effectively lowering their taxes without increasing any housing units. This has created some funding issues for my community as well as some other ones. So the first bill just straight out increases it from 8 to 10%. But the second bill basically says that if your community has met that 10% threshold for affordable housing, that any of these new high-intensity housings that would meet this program would be charged at the 10% rate versus the 8% rate. And basically, that's what it does, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Senator Picard? Senator Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator, so when you say that some of these housing, you said they have made some changes in order to meet the requirements. Can you elaborate on that? What does that look like when they do that?
I can only repeat to you what was told to me by some of the administrators of my community. What they told me was by changing, ripping out old rugs, laying them down, doing some painting, anything that would meet the minimal requirements to allow them to meet this program, that's what they would do. It wasn't any major renovations, is my understanding. I don't know if that helps. Further questions?
Senator Rogers, did you have a question?
No, this type of language is new. I'm a little bit involved with affordable housing and how it's set up, but this one kind of threw me for a curveball. Is it a qualifying thing that's offered through a state or local, or is this part of the state push for affordable housing? I don't understand where they're charging a percentage of the rental income, and the way it's written, I know you had mentioned this is basically aimed at large mill expansions or mill conversions, which would absorb and push the communities to meet their 10%. but the way the bill is written, it's almost like, is this net going to catch, the smaller individual landlords that are, may not have as much buffer to support their income on that. So those are a couple of questions. I don't know if you can answer.
No, and that's a good point, and I'm willing to work on this. Like I said, this has been put in numerous times over the past 2 years in a variety of different formats. In my background knowledge on affordable housing and all the taxation and how it goes about to incentivize building things is not as deep as it could be, Senator Rogers, so that anything that would make this cleaner, I'd be happy to address.
Any other questions for Senator Picard? Okay, we do have 4 people that have registered to testify on this bill. First one is Jennifer Hawkins. Jennifer? Jennifer Hawkins from the One Neighborhood Builders. She opposes
Hi, good
this bill.
afternoon.
How are you?
I'm well, thank you, Chairman Lombardo. Yes, I am Executive Director of One Neighborhood Builders. I'm just calling to testify in opposition to Bills 237 and 238, and also 343. But the first two bills, 237 and 238, to increase the property tax from 8% to 10% of gross potential income for affordable housing projects. This would be exceptionally detrimental to the viability of these projects, and I strongly oppose any increase. When the projects are underwritten, it's predicated on it remaining at 8% for the duration of the compliance period, and these are underwritten with such incredibly small margins that any increase can really kind of tank a project, to be blunt. And since I'm on the phone, that Bill 343 to count mobile homes as deed-restricted housing and towards the state's LMI 10% requirement, I'm also in opposition to. Any project that does not have a long-term deed restriction should not be able to be counted towards the 10% state goal. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Jennifer. Are there any questions from the committee to Jennifer? Seeing none, Jennifer, thank you very much and enjoy your evening.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Now we have testifying Billy Walsh, representing Rhode Island Builders Association, on Bill 237, 238. Mr. Walsh, welcome to the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Bill Walsh on behalf of the Builders Association. Also here in opposition to Senate Bills 237 and 238. While we are opposed to these bills, I would like to thank the sponsor for his broad commitment to affordable housing and improving the quality of life of people in his community, as well as the fiscal health. I've appreciated working and collaborating with him on both efforts over the years and hope to continue to do so. However, the bill presented before us today, both of these present significant challenges to both the development and continued operation of affordable housing units. We view this law as strongly integral to all of our growth in affordable housing over the years, and to what presents to be a 25% tax increase on buildings that are encumbered either to the rents to be charged or the incomes of the occupants. We have nowhere to go to pass these costs on, and it would jeopardize current services operations and future improvements to these properties, while also potentially thwarting future affordable housing developments. We do very much understand where the community is coming from. The LMI goals as set forth in the state, and we stand at the ready to find ways to help find them a sufficient reward for the investments and improvements that have been made in meeting these targets. They do rightly should be rewarded, but we believe that it's the state that should be promoting meeting these targets and not having an impact on the folks who have made the long-term fiscal commitments to these buildings, as well as those operating them, and ultimately to the residents that are living in them. So for those reasons, we're opposed to the bill, but we're happy to continue all our efforts with the sponsor moving forward. Happy to answer any questions.
Questions from the committee for Bill? Seeing none. Bill, thank you very much for your testimony. Enjoy your evening.
Thank you.
Next testifying, we have Melinda Large, representing the Housing Network of Rhode Island. She's opposed to Bill 237, 238, 243, and 653. Melinda, welcome to the committee. If you be willing
Hi.
to testify on all four bills, that would be tremendous.
Sure, I can do that. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Melinda Large. I'm the Executive Director of the Housing Network of Rhode Island. We represent 17 nonprofit affordable housing developers and community development corporations around the state, collectively having built about 15,000 affordable housing units and produced about 70% of the activity generated under the 2006, 2012, and 2016 housing bonds. And we are opposed to all four of these bills, and I'll speak to them in buckets since they're very similar. For Senate Bill 237 and 238, and I did submit written testimony, so I'll be brief. This issue has been litigated multiple times where the court already found in favor that the 8% taxation rate was in fact fair based on the restricted value of the properties. And going to 10% is seemingly innocent enough, except it represents a 25% increase in the rate of taxes on housing meant to serve our lowest income Rhode Islanders. And given that there has been a push in this chamber and in the House to increase state investments in housing with an emphasis on affordable housing, these two bills don't seem to align with that priority. So we just wanted to call that out. As far as Senate Bill 243 and 653 go, there are three basic functions to qualify as affordable housing. One, that there is a subsidy involved. Two, that there is a long-term restriction that qualifies that unit long-term as affordable, and that the folks who reside in that unit meet certain income qualifications. So just calling something affordable housing, in the case here would be mobile homes, doesn't actually meet any of the requirements under the state law. And we would ask that this be considered under the low mod commission that's been proposed, and the housing czar position which has been proposed. Happy to answer any questions if anybody has them.
Thank you, Melinda. Any questions from the committee?
Mr. Chairman?
Senator Picard.
Just a quick question, so I'm making sure my stories again straight. The person who was just testifying was saying that this was litigated in court. Do you remember the last time it was litigated in court, the time frame?
I could not honestly answer that question. It certainly predates, my role in the housing network, which would have been 2012.
Okay. I remember people telling me, and I'm trying to remember, that the initial litigation was a few decades ago, and I was just wondering if there was any updated litigation since then. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. Any other questions? Seeing none. Melina, thank you very much for your testimony. Enjoy your evening.
Thank you. You also.
On the line, we have Amy Renone, representing Rhode Island Housing. She will be testifying on 237, 238, 243, and 653, opposing all the bills. Amy, welcome to the committee.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, members of the committee. Appreciate the opportunity to testify before you this evening. Rhode Island Housing respectfully opposes Senate Bills 237 and 238 dealing with the 8% taxation law. Just to touch on some comments that have been made so far, The 8% law was intended, under current law, properties are taxed at their full and fair cash value. That's the statutory basis for a real estate transaction. This statute was created for deed-restricted properties that serve low and moderate income families where the rents cannot rise to support market conditions. They're set by statute, by the federal programs that those units are subsidized under to serve low and moderate income families. So the 8% law was designed to sort of approximate full and fair cash value for those deed-restricted properties and reflect the limits on the revenue that those properties can generate due to those deed restrictions. So our concern with the legislation that's been proposed, as you've heard from some of the other folks, is that first it would threaten the financial stability of existing affordable apartments that were underwritten, whose financing was underwritten based on that 8% taxation rate. Many of those properties operate on a very slim margin and would not be able to absorb increases to the tax rate. So certainly that is a significant concern. But also moving forward, we depend on investors who are willing to invest in the low-income housing tax credit program that provides the equity for a great deal of the affordable housing development and preservation in Rhode Island and across the country. Any kind of instability like this in terms of the operating costs associated with instability or increase in those operating costs associated with the property taxes could threaten the interests of those investors and therefore the production of future affordable housing. So those are serious concerns that we would have with both of those pieces of legislation. With regard to Senate Bills 243 and 653 regarding counting mobile homes as affordable housing, I would just echo the comments that have already been made. The law was designed to encourage the production of affordable housing. What these two bills would do is basically count existing mobile homes that don't necessarily serve low and moderate income households, and we can't speak to the condition of those properties either. We hope that in looking at potential changes to the Low and Moderate Income Housing Act, we can continue to look for strategies that incentivize affordable housing production, and Rhode Island Housing would be happy to participate in that conversation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Amy. Questions for Amy from the committee? Senator Picard?
Just a simple one. The investors, their requirement for the return on investment or what is being offered by the people who are looking for their investments, do you have a range or a percentage that they may, that allows them to or excites them to invest in these type of properties?
It's more around the stability of the resource. So, for instance, investors that are participating in the low-income housing tax credit program are required to maintain the affordability of these developments. Their limitation is 15 years. The limitation on the properties themselves goes much longer than that. And during that period that the investor is involved, the property has to continue to perform to meet the requirements and all of that kind of thing. So if they have a concern around the ability of those properties to cash flow for that entire 15-year period, then that's going to reduce interest in those investors to participate in the tax credit program.
Mr. Chair, follow-up question?
Certainly, Senator Picard.
I understand what she just discussed, but it didn't give me a percentage or a dollar amount. Do you have something a little bit more concrete?
You mean like a return on investment? You mean like a return on investment kind of thing? So, yeah, that's not actually how the tax credit program works. The tax credit program, an investor, when they are entering into a low-income housing tax credit as an investment partner, they basically say that they will provide, say for instance, 98% on the dollar for that tax credit. And what that means is, that they put that equity up front, and then they receive a federal tax benefit over the next 10 years, and they get basically the difference in that dollar. They're paying 98%. They're getting that dollar's worth of credit from the federal government. So it's not like what you might traditionally think of in terms of a developer earning a certain amount of profit. That's not really what those investors are experiencing. They're getting a federal tax credit based on how much of an upfront equity investment that they made, if that makes sense.
It does, and I understand what you were just saying. So is 98% a typical range, or is it lower, higher?
94 to 98 cents generally, something like that.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Amy? Seeing none, Amy, thank you very much. Enjoy your evening.
Thank you. You too.
Is there a motion to hold Bill number 237 and 238 by Senator Coleman, seconded by Senator Rogers? Clerk, will you take the roll?
Chairman Lombardo,
Yes.
Senator Coleman,
Yes.
Senator Rogers,
Yes.
Senator Anderson,
Yes.
Senator Gallo,
Yes.
Senator Mack,
Yes.
Senator Picard, I'm sorry, did you get muted?
Senator Picard, I believe you're muted.
Yes for both.
Motion's held.
Thank you. Next bill on the agenda is by Senator DePalma. Senator DePalma, if you don't mind speaking on both of your bills. First one
I can do
is
that, Chairman.
243, an act relating to towns and cities' low and moderate income housing. And Bill number 832, an act relating to levy and assessment of local taxes. Senator DePalma, welcome to committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Let me start by saying I want to thank Senator Rogers on your committee for the robust conversation we had the other day as it relates to the bill. I'll get to a little bit more about that in a second. The bill needs more work based on the conversation with Senator Rogers and his work with regards to affordable housing now and in the past. But as has already been described by some of the folks who signed up to testify, Amy and others, what this bill seeks to do is include manufactured homes within a mobile manufactured home park as being allowed to be included in meeting the affordable housing goal in the cities and towns. So that's what this seeks to do. Mr. Chairman, with regards to the next bill that you have before you, and the bill that I just talked about, 243, has been in several times before, and this was a bill many will remember who've been around before. I inherited and welcomely inherited from Senator Fogarty in the past. So let me vector over now to a different topic on Bill 832, and several of us have been involved with this area over the years. I've been involved with this bill in various and sundry forms over time. This has to do with renewable energy, has to do with the taxing on renewable energy, and why is it needed? Why is it needed now? Why is it important? It's to try and create some kind of consistency amongst the cities and towns, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, as it relates to how renewable energy is taxed, the projects are taxed across the cities and towns. I know there'll be several folks, including Seth Handy, who is extremely knowledgeable about this, but there have been a court case that was adjudicated on several years ago. The group then met, worked to try to work with the cities and towns, thought they came to a resolution about this, but it appears there's still some, I suspect, reason for this language is ambiguity with regards to how cities and towns are seeking to try and tax renewable energy projects. What this seeks to do is provide some common ground, some common approach, so that they'll be looked at as tangible property that's here, and the ground upon which they are located taxed appropriately as well. And obviously, with regards to, you'll see it carved out or described regarding exceptions for reclassification of farmland and a reference to that. So that's why this bill has been introduced, is to try and bring some consistency and clarity across cities and towns in the state of Rhode Island that has manifested itself over the last year plus. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll try and address any questions, but there's certainly some folks, like I said, Seth Handy and others, and Hannah will be coming after me, I believe, to talk about this bill here. So, thank you.
Thank you, Senator DePalmer. Questions for Senator DePalmer on either bill? Senator Rogers.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a statement on 238 and 243, they're kind of alike. We did have a discussion, and there was some things that weren't taken into account. The way the bill currently stands would be in conflict with deed restrictions. So as it stands, 238 and 243 are kind of like trying to take a square peg and put it in a round hole, and it just doesn't fit at this point. So it clearly needs a little bit of work, and there's always challenges. But if I may, I'd like to go on to Bill 832. I've had several phone calls from one from a former senator in West Greenwich who's a town manager, and I also I got tracked down today another town manager and several tax collectors. And this one, believe it or not, this bill kind of relates to one of the reasons why I got motivated to get into running for Senate. It was one of those things, you hear me talk about from time to time, with the unfunded mandates, or much like on a federal level, overstepping the bounds of states' rights, and then we turn into states' rights stepping into municipal rights, where they should be able to govern. And a lot of times the lobbyists get involved, and it comes down to money. Now, a little bit of history of how solar started in municipalities. And as we all know, I'm indifferent about it. I really am, because I do see, but these type of bills actually push me in a different direction on it. And it's not about climate change. At the end of the day, it's about financing for a town. So years ago, when solar started coming in, we were allowed to sit down, because the way solar is, it's set funds. You've got people that build it, you've got investors that make money, you've got people that lend money. So what was originally done when solar started coming in, they wouldn't go with a tangible, like when you start a business and you put multiple lifts at an auto body shop and toolboxes and stuff, and the tax collector comes in and says, that has a value, and here's the tangible rate, commercial rate's this on the bill, and it all rolls into the bill. So as the solar arrays came, municipalities can change the tangible municipal rate. It's flexible. They may want to be pro-business and reduce the commercial mill rate and increase the residential rate. But with solar farms, it's a set profit to certain people. So, like I explained, investors, builders. So what would happen commonly in situations like this, the communities would sit down and do what was called a tax treaty. And they'd run usually 15 to 20 years. And they would sit down with the people representing the solar, and they'd sit in a room and they'd go over basically a tax treaty, and they'd come out of the room and say, all right, we're going to get this amount through the year, through the amount of the program. They could get so much up front, or they could get so much a year. It was all in a contract, kind of like we do with the Providence Water Supply Board. We have tax treaties on the land they own. So as that went on, apparently, truth be told, certain people were not making enough, or thought they should be making a little bit more, so they talked to their lobbyists. And the lobbyists start lobbying people like us and say, hey, listen, we got to change this. There's no uniformity here. So what's working out is not working out. We propose that we put a cap on what they could charge on the kilowatts of the systems going in. So I happen to be actually sitting in on a municipal level when we were doing negotiations, and we were just starting negotiations on a 15 or 20-year treaty, and all of a sudden it just stopped. And it dragged on, and the solar rate didn't go in because they were waiting for this cap to be passed by the legislature, both sides, and then the governor. And lo and behold, it happened. And it severely affected what we were going to try and get at the table. But it also hit two ways. when a municipality is dealing with different areas, and in, for example, my town, we have 1%, if that, is zoned commercial. 99% is zoned agricultural residential. And as we all know, in a community, to increase your commercial zoning, you encroach on agricultural residential or residential, and it's a battle. So it's very difficult to do that. So, you know, when they did that one size fits all, $5 a kilowatt, whatever it was, we lost the ability, because what was happening is the solar farms were starting to pick off the commercial lots. Because when they purchased the commercial lot and they went in front of the town, the neighborhood wasn't really upset because, hey, it's on Route 6 next to the gas station or next to the auto shop. But it was hurting us because it was removing the limited amount of commercial property we had. And if the law hadn't been changed, that was an argument I was going to use. I was going to say, you guys are taking the easy path. But the easy path is going to cost money because we could put a CVS in there. And a CVS would benefit the neighbors. The CVSs would benefit the neighbors and the people in the neighborhood, and it would generate a positive revenue and wouldn't cost so much of a demand. So my argument would have been, hey, I can get a little bit more because you don't want to fight the battle and go in a neighborhood where the neighbors are all going to rear up against you. And that went out the window when they changed it. So what the communities did is, all right, we've lost a lot of money here, a lot of revenue, and we're hosting it. We're stakeholders. The rural communities are stakeholders at the table here. So that wasn't enough. So what the communities did is they started changing it. So let's say a 100-acre parcel was bought by Solar Ray, and it was in an AR or whatever zoning, and they used 20 acres of that. What the communities did was say, hey, you know, you're creating a business. You're not making AR. It's okay. You can raise tomatoes, corn, and cows and hay, but you're not raising tomatoes, corn, cows, and hay. Somebody's making a lot of money, and that's regardless, but you're creating almost like a commercial entity by producing an electricity and selling it to the companies that use it, and you're being subsidized by the rural community through their taxes. So what they did was they started changing the zoning, and there was a lawsuit to challenge that, but it happened to do, I think it was in Kingston with a wind turbine. So what the communities did was, in the negotiation, is they knew where the cap was, but they changed the zoning, and they got some of that back. They got some of what they lost back by changing the zoning. Open space in the town of Forest is $125 value an acre. So a $20 mill rate, it takes 10 acres, you're making $22. But if they put, and if that's 10 acres, you know, it's $220 revenue to the town. It's not demand or nothing. So we keep it rural out here. But when you start putting solars in, you're changing the rural character because now it's not a field. Now it's not a forest. But what we did was we started changing the zoning that the solar array encompassed. Of that 100 acres, 20 acres may have been the solar. They changed it to commercial and industrial, which changed the value, if it was open space, from 125 to maybe $40,000 an acre, which kind of helped a little bit. It didn't put us where we were before in negotiating, but it put us a little bit there. Well, this bill will erase all of that and say, basically, it's AR, it's open space, you can't change the zoning. And you're going to cut the communities off at the knees, and especially with this being retroactive. And we're talking tens of thousands, probably maybe 100,000 or more on deals that are already made. By this being retroactive going back will reduce that revenue coming in. For example, West Greenwich. So on the fact of that alone, it's bad being retroactive, but in my opinion, it's bad in the first place. If you want the rural communities to be stakeholders and want to be part of the solution of climate change, doing this is not the way to do it. It would be like saying to Twin River, the state making a law that says Twin River's coming to the state of Rhode Island, and whatever community they come to, they're not going to change the taxes. That they're going to build this building, they're going to build this entity, it's going to create jobs, like we're told solar and wind is. But you know what? Not only, forget the tax credits, but they're not going to pay any money to the municipality for hosting them. We are hosting these solar arrays. We are stakeholders at the table as communities and municipalities that are subsidizing this. But this is why you're getting a pushback from the rural communities, because now the politicians that are the municipal leaders, like I was at one time, when a solar array could come in, I said, you know what? That land was giving us $200 an acre, $200 a year. Now we're making 5,000 or 7,000, and that's a benefit to you because that offsets your taxes. This erases that, and now the tact is, if I'm running the municipality, I'm all for no solar because we don't benefit from it, but we have to host it. So these bills are part of the reason why you're getting a lot of pushback. If there's no skin in the game for us and it's forced down the throat, we got to lose money. This is what needs to change, and this is the type of stuff that pushed me from a local level to a state level, and it's kind of in my wheelhouse, and I'm kind of passionate about it. And if that comes through, I apologize. We all write bills, and I may write one day that I don't know a lot about. But again, I like to be a voice for this one to explain where it's not just me. I had multiple phone calls from town managers, treasurers, and tax collectors associations. So I understand the intent and what we want to do and our goals as a state, but I think we can work on this a little bit more, and that's all I have. And I'm sorry it took so long. I apologize.
Well, thank you very much for that detail, Senator Rogers. Any questions for Senator DePalma regarding Bill 243 or 832? Okay, we do have 3 people testifying on Bill number 832. We have Seth Handy from the Green Development LLC. Seth, welcome to the committee.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Seth Handy. I'm an attorney in Providence, Rhode Island, and I'm appearing on behalf of Green Development to support S832. I was involved in the litigation of the DePasquale versus Sweet case, in which the Supreme Court recognized that renewable energy is manufacturing equipment and is exempt from taxation completely. As a result of that decision, we went back and agreed to negotiate with the League of Cities and Towns and the towns to establish a fair and consistent and foreseeable methodology for taxing renewable energy. We knew that that was the right result. That resulted in the General Assembly adopting Section 4453C, which was a methodology for taxing renewable energy. It's part of the provision on how municipalities can treat their rateable property. It's the provision that authorizes municipalities to tax whatever they tax, including real estate and tangible property. And it establishes, that statute establishes that renewables are solely to be taxed as a tangible asset pursuant to regulations developed by the Office of Energy Resources. We worked together again with the League of Cities and Towns and the municipalities to develop those regulations. And those regulations indicated that were based on the pilot agreements that were referenced in Senator Rogers' statement, the payments in lieu of taxes. It was meant to obviate the need for payment in lieu of taxes, and it basically established a $5 per kilowatt charge that could be assessed, tax that could be assessed on renewable energy. That $5 a kilowatt came from pilot agreements that had been negotiated with municipalities. That's largely where it came from. So municipalities had already agreed to that as the reasonable taxation of renewable energy. OER developed the rules, and in doing so, said they wanted to provide consistent and foreseeable tax treatment of renewable energy to facilitate its installation. The Office of Energy Resources subsequently sent a letter to all of the municipalities, making it very clear that the tangible tax was the only way that they were authorized to tax renewable energy. But now municipalities have taken to not only charging the tangible tax, but also changing the valuation of the underlying real estate based on the presence of renewable energy. That is a major, major problem for the industry. It's inconsistent with the statute that you passed that indicates that these assets are solely to be treated as a tangible asset for taxation purposes. And it also doesn't provide, it fundamentally results in a double tax for these assets. It isn't consistent and foreseeable because it's applied differently across different municipalities in terms of what rate they charge, making it very difficult for the industry to know what to expect, which is not good for development interests. And it doesn't promote installation, which was the purpose of the OER rules as well. There's no question that the municipalities can still collect tax. They can certainly collect the tangible tax that was authorized by the General Assembly, but they can also continue to collect a tax on the underlying real estate. We're not saying that it's not taxed at all. We just say that it shouldn't be changed just based on the presence of the tangible asset, the renewable energy. We worked in good faith to negotiate this solution. We believe it was the right solution, and we believe that this legislation is the only way to bring clarity to this situation that is being litigated in courts across the state right now. And I appreciate the opportunity to testify, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Seth. I do have a question, Seth. It's beneficial for solar companies or wind companies, wind farms, to go in a rural area because the taxes on that property is a lot less than going to a suburban area where you'll be renting or leasing land that is zoned commercial, which would inflate the cost of taxes on that property. So it's beneficial for solar and wind to go to rural communities, which could take the brunt of it. Senator Rogers?
I'm sorry. Did you finish your question?
Yeah. Well, it was more of a comment, and maybe you can respond to that comment before we go to Senator Rogers.
Yeah. Well, so we have equity issues with the fact that our energy supply was located in our urban cores historically, and they bore the burden of our energy supply for many, many years. And it was a much greater burden than is posed by renewable energy today in terms of its impact on the populations. But what I would say is that, we have new goals, both for climate and for renewable energy that are extremely aggressive. It's not a question of whether these assets will be located only in rural areas or only in urban areas. They are going to be located everywhere. We're going to need more and more of them to satisfy our need for electricity and our standards for where we get that electricity from. So, and this is a fair system of taxation. It's a uniform system. It's a system that enables the developer to understand what to expect, and it's based again on what the municipalities negotiated as pilot agreements. It's based on what the municipalities thought this asset was worth. The other element of this is these assets, are unlike strip developments in that they don't require, new sewers. They don't require new schools. They don't put nearly as much burden on the community as the alternatives. And these sites that are developed with renewable energy, are typically available for other kinds of development. Are available for other kinds of development that put much more strain on the community.
Thank you, Senator Rogers.
Couple points. How you doing? Thank you, Chair. The caller mentioned that at one time, basically flipped the coin. He said at one time the suburban areas hosted the majority where the power was generated, and now it's the rural communities. But I want to drill down on that a little bit. The power station in Providence, which I'm sure you're referring to, probably sat on a 15-acre site and pretty much produced enough flow coming in and distributed it through the entire state of Rhode Island. That is not comparable with the city hosting at one time suburban area of the power, and now we're talking 300-acre, 400-acre solar arrays in size alone. And like I said, I didn't agree with the assessment that came through through the League of Cities and Towns and the $5 kilowatt. If that was some kind of brokering you did, because it was a one size fits all. It didn't take in, and I touched on that, where in my town that I live in, they're going to the commercial lots. Yes, those lots are already zoned commercial, but do the difference. It says when you put the solar array on, you're really not. It's $5. It's capped, but like I emphasized, not only would they get at the money currently if a CVS moved in there. You know, a CVS, I'll give you one that pays a large amount of taxes to the town of Foster and Tangible, and the building itself has a value that generates a large amount of tax bill on top of the actual land being zoned commercial. So it really wasn't a fair deal because it did a one size fits all. Like I said, it didn't take in, and like I said, 1% of my town is zoned commercial, and as they take it away and they put solar in, it's not a fair deal because we are forced to either zone more, which is a whole nother headache, and I really don't think it's fair. And again, all these town managers, a couple of town managers, town treasurers, and tax collectors, we're all fighting for $1, and it just seems like the municipalities in the rural areas are taking a hit. And yes, the solar is going to go in a lot of places, but I had mentioned it in the meeting the other night. This new idea that's coming through, where you may not have a new enough roof, and they'll frown upon putting solar on your roof because the roof needs to be repaired, and it's cost prohibitive to do both, and you don't have a big enough backyard to do a ground mount system. Now they're starting to allow residents to buy into a large solar array put in possibly in a rural area where they buy into it and they get tax credits back. So instead of putting it on their roof or in their backyard, they are now buying into the rural areas, what I'm talking about, to buy into a large solar array out in the country and get credited for it. So we are going to bear the great brunt of this as these new ideas come down the line. And it's going to pit local municipalities and rural communities against these solar farms. And any of these politicians are going to side with the people that vote them in. If there's nothing they can argue as a benefit, this is what life's about. So they're cutting that pretty thin, and I think they've gone past the point where there's going to be challenges. It's going to be difficult. So I really don't agree with the bill. I think municipalities, if we're going to host it and be stakeholders at the table, we should be taking some type of benefit from it to host these. Like I said, you're not going to allow Twin River into your community and not pay its fair share and host them. And again, solar is passive. Solar doesn't create any issues, but you know, a CVS or a supermarket is a benefit to the town where they don't have to drive far and shop versus a solar array. I think if you ask anybody in the town on that commercial property in my town, would you rather have a supermarket or a solar array? I don't care who you are. They're going to say a supermarket. And I can pretty much guarantee you the supermarket will generate much more revenue and much more benefit to the town than a solar array. So again, we're stakeholders. We need to address this. We need to think, because if you want everybody to come together and meet this goal of addressing the climate issue, I think this is the wrong way of going about it. I think the wrong people are probably benefiting from this, and it's at the stake of the municipalities and the people that subsidize this and who are going to host this. So again, it's passionate. I apologize. Please don't take me the wrong way. I'm willing to work with anybody on this. Like I've said before, we can agree there's a problem, but we probably disagree on how to fix the problem. And there are solutions we can find. Thanks.
Seth, you care to comment on that?
Mr. Chair, if I may respond.
Absolutely.
You know, I'm passionate about it too. I don't hold it against you at all. You know, the Supreme Court classified these assets as manufacturing equipment. The General Assembly has long had a policy on manufacturing equipment that treats it beneficially for tax purposes. And so when the Supreme Court acknowledged that this is manufacturing equipment, it was subject to a total exemption. And I worked in good faith. We all worked in good faith together to establish the current system of taxation. And, you know, that's what was embodied in the law, and that was what was embodied in the OER rules that we all worked together to develop. And the fact is that everyone benefits from renewable energy. Everyone uses electricity, and our state policies make it clear that we support the growth of this industry. So it's not just, it's the people in the rural communities that use electricity that benefit from it as well. And they're getting tax revenue from these projects, and they're not having to provide the same level of municipal service. So it's just a question of fairness based on what was previously negotiated.
Thank you, Seth.
Yeah.
We have any other questions for Seth? Seeing none, Seth, thank you very much for your testimony. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you.
If we can bring back Senator DePalmer for a second. Senator DePalmer, are you there?
I am, Mr. Chairman. Very quickly.
Sure.
As I mentioned earlier, what the bill seeks to do is bring uniformity. And some will folks, well, cities and towns, because of home rule charter, can do what they want. Well, I call people's attention to what needed to get accomplished because of the courts as well, as it relates to permitting and permitting for building permits. Basically went to the court, came back and said, we need to come to some kind of uniformity across the state, so there's a standard as opposed to each city and town doing what they want to do individually. So this seeks to provide uniformity as well. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator DePalmer. Next on the line, we have Kenneth Mallett, Jr., opposed of this legislation, representing Rhode Island Assessing Officers Association Legislation Committee Chair. Kenneth, welcome to the committee.
Thank you.
Floor is yours.
Mr. Chairman, honorable members of the committee, I thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. I did take part in the discussions when the developers of solar energy came before the Office of Energy Resources to discuss these projects and how they would be taxed. We did come to what is now state law on tangible taxes. It did not include real estate, although at least one member of that committee does say that was included, but I was among 6 assessors sitting at that table that determined that was not the case. The only thing we ask is that you treat these developers the same way you treat every tax-paying citizen of the state of Rhode Island, to establish fair market value, highest and best use, and to apply the applicable assessing and appraisal practices to this property, to look at it and say it's going to continue to be valued as open space land or valued as something other than what it is, and that is a commercial development that receives multiple tax credits and also has a very lucrative tangible property tax exemption already in place. When we're taxing our homeowners at what market value is, what they're willing to pay for a property, we should be doing the same for developers and commercial properties. We do it for all our other commercial properties, and in this case, I know of several instances where developers have paid exorbitant amounts of money for acreage to develop these solar farms. They just paid $17 million for 200 acres of land in North Kingstown. That would be the market value, not the $1.8 million that is currently assessed at, but actually at what these developers are willing to pay. One of the basic principles of assessing and appraisal practices is arm's length transactions. What a willing buyer and a willing seller are willing to partake in an arrangement that has no undue influence by either party. That's all we're asking for. We're asking you to be fair and equitable, and for these reasons, I am voicing that we are opposed and you've given many pieces of testimony from other assessors. We are opposed to this legislation as it is written, and we are vehemently opposed to the fact that this is written as retroactive. No legislation should be retroactive. It should be from this point forward. There is pending litigation already in the courts on these very matters, and the state legislature shouldn't be making law that is going to affect municipalities in such an adverse way. One of our municipalities, however small it may be, the town of Hopkinton, is looking at a loss of about $160,000 to $170,000 should this take effect. For all of these reasons, I'm asking that the committee please vote no. Protect the mom and pops, protect your parents and yourselves as homeowners, because what you do today will have an impact on every single one of us. Thank you.
Kenneth, thank you very much for your testimony. Do we have any questions or comments for Kenneth? Seeing none, Kenneth, thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you.
Next person testifying is Hannah Moroney from Green Development, LLC. She is in support. We have some back feed. Thank you. Hannah, welcome to the committee. Stand by while we try to contact Hannah. Hannah?
Hello?
Hannah?
Yes, I'm here.
Great. Thank you very much. Welcome to the committee. Floor is yours.
Thank you very much for allowing me to speak this afternoon. My name is Hannah Moroney. I am the Director of Business Development for Green Development, and I've been working in the renewable energy space, specifically in Rhode Island, for the past 12 years. And I am calling in to support this bill, which solves a major issue that has been really plaguing the renewable energy industry for well over a decade. And one of the things that is truly lacking in the clean energy industry in our state is a lack of predictability and transparency in the taxation of these projects. The General Assembly solved this issue back in 2016, late 2016. But 5 years later, we are still dealing with the same problem, which is the tangible tax rate of $5 per kilowatt that was agreed upon by many, but they are also increasing the value of the land underneath the solar projects. And frankly, it is a major deterrent to building projects should this continue. And so the bill before you adds further clarification to the existing law. I can give you a very clear recommendation of how this is a deterrent and how towns are currently double dipping on these projects. So the town of Richmond, we have a 5 megawatt project that went online back in 2016. So that project pays the town of Richmond $25,000 on previously vacant land, $25,000 in tangible taxes. Also, so this we are not opposed at all to if a project is currently in farm, forest, and open space. This is not farm, forest, and open space unless it falls under the dual use law of under 20% on active agriculture land. So we are not opposed to these projects coming out of farm, forest, and open space. But if it comes out of farm, forest, and open space, and the underlying property is commercial, then it should be charged as vacant commercial. That is what we're saying here. So So we owe $25,000 in tangible taxes to the town of Richmond for our 5-megawatt solar project. But instead, and then the project came out of Farm Forest and Open Space. So the rate went from, basically negligible taxes to an underlying value of $13,200 an acre. The town then additionally, because there was solar presence on the land, valued the property underneath the solar project at $40,000, essentially doubling the taxes that we owed and projected to be owed for our 5-megawatt solar project. This is completely counter to the point of the law that the General Assembly passed back in 2016. It was not predictable. It was not communicated to us beforehand that this is how this project was going to be taxed, and now we are seeing this happen all over the state. So the OER has written a clarifying letter saying, again, that tangible taxes are the only method by which renewable energy should be taxed, but we're still seeing this. So we are not saying that we are not removing a town's ability to tax to tax these projects. We are not saying that they are tax exempt from property taxes. What we're saying is that if it's commercial, you can tax at the commercial rate. If it's residential, you can tax it at the residential rate. But it is preventing a tax increase in both manners being tangible and underlying property taxes, which is protecting the original intent of the bill. Another point that I wanted to bring up is that this does not at all take away a town's ability to negotiate. I can think of 2 instances right now of projects that we are currently working on or are currently operational that the towns negotiated a higher tangible tax rate on the project. So this in no way takes away a town's ability to negotiate, but only on the tangible taxes as the law permits, not on the underlying property taxes. Again, we are not opposed to these projects coming out of Farm Forest, the land coming out of Farm Forest and Open Space. The dual use law says that a property does not have to come out of Farm Forest and Open Space if 20% or less of the land is covered in solar. If it's over that, it should come out. So that is an additional incentive. We are not calling these open space projects. We are calling them, it is commercial land underneath the project, or it is residential land underneath the project. But whatever the current classification of the property is, it should stay that way. And another reason this is important, and I know a couple other callers have brought this up, is that this equipment, without this law that we all sat around the table, negotiated, and agreed to a few years ago, the towns would not be getting any tangible taxes for this because it is manufacturing equipment. It is exempt. We agreed, along with many other developers, we agreed to pay tangible taxes for something that we knew and thought at the Supreme Court for this to be exempt from tangible taxes. We agreed to this because it was a clear way to go about taxing renewable energy projects, and it was agreed to as a whole that tangible taxes is the best way to move forward taxing these projects. I'm happy to answer any questions. Again, I've been around working on these projects in the state, several different positions over the past 12 years. But before this law was originally in place, there was really no incentive for projects to even go into different communities because towns could also vote and say, hey, we're not going to tax renewable energy. I'm going back way before 2016 now. We're going to exempt them. Well, that's great, but if they're exempt, the town has no incentive whatsoever to allow these projects to go in because they're not getting paid for it. So this actually created what we thought was a clear incentive to allow, to encourage renewable energy to be hosted in communities. it is an incentive. The property that I mentioned in Richmond, that $25,000 of tangible taxes that the town is receiving on an annual basis, that would not have happened. That is vacant commercial land behind a farm stand. That would have raised $0 for the town if it were not for the solar project. And frankly, if we had known that it was going to be charged both, the taxes were going to be tangible and a huge increase under the underlying property taxes, we would not have built that project, and the town would not be getting any funds for it. So clarity is key in both raising taxes for these local communities and also for encouraging these renewable energy projects and maintaining the steady increase of clean energy jobs that our industry currently employs. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Hannah. Do we have any questions from the committee for Hannah? Seeing none. Hannah, thank you very much for your testimony. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you.
So we're going to hold Bill 832 for further study. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
By Senator Anderson?
Gallo.
No, Senator Gallo, I'm sorry. And seconded by Senator Rogers. Clerk, will you take the roll?
Chairman Lombardo,
Yes.
Senator Coleman,
Yes.
Senator Rogers,
Yes.
Senator Anderson,
Yes.
Senator Gallo,
Yes.
Senator Mack,
Yes.
Senator Picard.
Yes.
Bill is held for further study.
832 will be held for further study. The last bill on the agenda is by Senator
Thank you,
Morgan.
Chairman.
Yes,
Thank you.
you're welcome, Senator DePalma. The last bill on the agenda is by Senator Morgan, Bill number 653, an act relating to motor and other vehicles, mobile and manufactured homes, affordable housing. Qualifies mobile and manufactured homes as affordable housing when installed and affixed in a mobile and manufactured home parks in groups of 20 or more. Do we have any questions or comment? This is similar to the bill, Senator DePalma's bill we just testified on. Senator Rogers.
Like I had mentioned before, I think this produces the same challenges we need to overcome with the other bill, Senator Picard's. I think they both need work in the same manner if we're going to move forward with them. That's all.
Thank you, Senator Rogers. Any other questions, comments, or discussion regarding the last two bills? Hearing none, do I hear a motion to hold? By
Motion
Senator
to hold.
Rogers, seconded by Senator Coleman. Clerk, please take the roll.
Chairman Lombardo,
Yes.
Senator Coleman,
Yes.
Senator Rogers,
Yes.
Senator Anderson,
Yes.
Senator Gallo,
Yes.
Senator Mack,
Yes.
Senator Picard.
Yes.
Bill is held for further study.
Both bills, Bill number 243 and 253, will be held for further study. That concludes our meeting. Thank you very much to the committee. Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor, say aye. All opposed, nay.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much,
Aye.
committee. Enjoy the rest of your week and the weekend.